It took them almost a year, but Nubatama finally learned the art of the substitution jutsu.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another set review of Infinideity Cradle, and this time we're gonna take a look at the new Nubatama cards they got in this set, as they were introduced with an awesome new VR on Akatsuki Hanzo. But not only that, in this set they also introduced a new type of mechanic exclusive to Nubatama, and that's the evil decoy token. Yes, once again we get another token mechanic, but this one is a little bit different than the one that we got in Neo Nectar or that we got with Kagero, as these tokens aren't only units on the field, but they can be used in their own right, but also different units can use them for different purposes. So this is a very new interesting concept that is new to Nubatama. So without further ado, let's jump right into these new card reveals and see what these cards will mean for Nubatama as a whole. Of course, we're going to start off with the new reprint cards, and we've got this grade 2 Stealth Rogue of 1,000 Blades, Oborozakura. And for those who don't remember, his skill is Auto Regular Circle. When placed, if you have 3 or more units, cost, counter +1, this unit gets power +6k until the end of turn. And if your damage zone has 1 or less face-up cards, soul charge 1. So overall, it's not a very good reprint, but it is a very useful reprint, as this set doesn't really use a lot of counterblast, but it's gonna use a lot of soul, and we are able to reuse our unplaced skills quite effectively and on demand. So this ability is very useful in the new build for Nubatama. So overall, I think it's a solid 3-star reprint, as it is useful for the deck. It would be more if it wasn't already a rare in the set that it was introduced. Then besides that reprint, we also got the trigger reprints, but those are only gonna get 1 star, as they're just generic reprint of triggers, and we already got plenty of those. Then with those, we also got the new third crit trigger, and for them, that's Stealth Dragon Ganbaku. And just like all the other new triggers, we're gonna give it 3 stars, as it just opens up more deck design, as we can now play with our trigger lineup. But with that said, we also got a new starter, and for them, that is Evil Stealth Dragon Ushimitsumaru, and I'm only gonna give it 1 star, as it's just another normal starter with the same skill but just a palette swap. Now with that, we finally get the grade 1 drop RPG, as we didn't get it in the previous support with Gamigyobu, and for them that is Fiend Sunabenten, and I'm gonna give it 3 stars, as it's just a new drop RPG that opens up more deck design with the inclusion of the third crit. Then in terms of vanilla in this set, we've got a new grade 1 15k shield variant, and this time it's Stealth Fiend Yukiouji, but the problem is we already got this type of vanilla, so I'm only gonna give it 1 star, as it's basically a reprint but done with a different name and a different artwork. So yeah, it's not ideal, and we're not going to use it in any shape or form. Now we're going to get to the new cards of this set, and we're going to start off with this grade 1, that is Stealth Rogue of Gold Hooks, Aogita. And Aogita's skill is Auto Regular Circle. When it attacks or boosts, if your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, put a grade 2 or less card from your drop zone into your soul. This condition might sound awkward and bad at the same time, as most persons will have more than 1 rear guard onto the field, but with the workings of the new VR, this is pretty easy to accomplish. And the fact that this build is going to be in need of a lot of soul, the fact that I can put units from a drop zone into the soul, is pretty good. So for that, I'm going to give it 3 stars, as this is going to be a vital card for the deck that's going to help with the resource problems. The next up, we have a grade 2 with a similar condition, and that is Stealth Beast Hametsukiba, and its ability is Continuous Rearguard Circle. If your opponent has 1 or less rearguards, this unit gets power +15k. It's pretty nice power gain that you're going to get, but it's on a 7k grade 2. And that's not good in any shape or form, especially if when we take a look at the following grade 2. So for this one, honestly, I'm going to give it 1 star, as yeah, the 15k increase is nice, but the 7k body is pretty bad, and it will only be useful in the new Akatsuki Hanzo build. But for that build, we have an even better grade 2 that is basically an upgrade to this version, so yeah, not great. And the grade 2 that I'm referring to is Stealth Rogue of Grudgeful Gaze, Daimaru. And his ability is Auto Regular Circle. When placed, if you have 5 rear guards, this unit gets power +15k until the end of turn. So this might sound bad, as it's unplaced, you need to have a full field, but with how Akatsuki Hanzo can bounce back fields, you can use the skill over and over again and always be guaranteed that you're going to place it once you have a full field. So you're going to have a solid 24k beater on notice when you need it. And it also interacts quite well with Magatsu Storm, as you can recall some units to the field and have a really strong beater on its own with the increase of the extra 5k power. So this is a overall pretty useful card, and I'm going to give it 3 stars as it's useful with 2 of the 3 VRs that we have in the clan right now. So that's actually pretty solid. Then next up, we've got a generic grade 3 support card, but this one is without a marker, and that is Hoodlum Stealth Rogue Tagamaru. And its ability is Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. Once per turn, when any rearguard is returned to hand during your turn, you may have this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. This ability is quite easy to fulfill in Nubatama, especially with the new support, but also with the old support. But having a 22k beater isn't really that significant, and the fact that it doesn't have a marker on top of it makes it really bad, and that's why I'm only gonna give it 1 star. If this ability wasn't once per turn, this would have actually been quite a powerful card, and would have made up for the fact that it doesn't have a marker on top of it. So yeah, sadly, that's not the case. Then next up, we've got a very interesting grade 2, as that Stealth Fiend Goinohi, and her ability is Auto Rearguard Circle. At the end of the battle, it attacked, cost, counter +2, and return this unit to your hand. Call up to 1 Stealth Fiend Goinohi from your hand to the Rearguard Circle, and that unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So this is interesting as it allows you to multi-attack, and you don't have to have extra cards, as you just bounce back her and then recall her immediately. And it's nice that it gets extra 10k power, means it can potentially beat over defensive triggers, but the downside is, because she herself is a 9k body, means you probably need to boost it, and then once they get a defensive trigger, by calling it for 19k, means it still won't be hitting over defensive trigger. There are some ways to circumvent this, by having still a column standing on the other side with the front row empty, and it even interacts quite well with Magatsu Storm, as you can even multi-attack beyond the certain things, so you can have some really good combinations. But the downside is that it costs 2 counterblasts, so it's very limited in what you can do, and it depends on how your build is that it can work or not work. So for now, I'm gonna give it 2 stars, as it's awkward in some case with the double counterblast cost, but there is potential. I see some potential with the card in some combinations, but you're going to need a lot of other cards, and you are reliant on combo pieces. So on its own, it's not really that amazing, as it costs 2 counterblasts. If it was 1 counterblast, this would be honestly so good, but 2 counterblasts is stretching it quite a bit. Then next up, we've got a very interesting grade 3 that had to be a Radat, because otherwise this thing would have quite been bonkers. And the one that I'm referring to is Shura Stealth Dragon Fuzencongo, and its ability is Auto Vanguard the Rearguard Circle. When it attacks, if your damage zone has 5 cards, cost Soul Blast 1 grade 3, bind any number of cards from your drop zone until the end of the battle. This unit gets power plus 5k for each card in your bind zone, and your opponent cannot call sentinels from his or her hand. So this is a super late game card, because you need to be sitting at 5 damage, but what you can do is basically have an insane beater that will not be guarded, as they cannot sentinel it, but in the time that you have 5 cards, you're going to use this skill, you will probably have 10, maybe 15 cards in your drop zone. So this card will get an increase of 50k, maybe 75k, maybe even 100k if you have 20 cards in your drop zone. So this card can basically be a guaranteed damage, unless they have an insane hand and they can hard guard against it. And the only negative part about this card is that it's behind the fact that you need to have 5 damage. But then again, by having this card in your arsenal, your opponent is very hesitant on just delivering a 5th damage. So this could give you some breathing room if they cannot guarantee themselves to kill you outright with a pressure turn. There is some merit to this card, and this card can really enable you to just outright win the game out of nowhere, if you even can give it some crits if you drive check some crits. So there is a lot of potential for this card. I'm definitely going to give it 4 stars, as this card can give you games out of nowhere. Next up, we're going to take a look at the cards that can generate these new evil decoy tokens, so we can see how other cards might interact with this decoy tokens and how efficiently they can function. So first off, we have the grade 1, that is Evil Stealth Dragon Kurogiri, and Kurogiri's ability is Act on Rearguard Circle. cost Soul+2, and return this unit to your hand and call up to 2 evil decoy tokens to the rearguard circle. Evil decoy tokens are grade 0 with shield 5k and have intercept, and they can intercept from the back row. So what's awesome about this card is that you get 2 decoy tokens for 2 soulless, but you also bounce back this grade 1 back to hand, so you retain the 10k shield, and you can potentially use this ability multiple times a turn if you have a lot of soul to work with. So this is a quite useful card, and it can also work in any type of build that you want to use, want to give some extra shield value, or want to incorporate cards that interact with grade 0s, because they are grade 0s. So for that, this is definitely a 5-star card in my book, because it can be splashed in any build, and it just gives you free shield for nothing. Then next up we have the grade 2 variant, that is Evil Stealth Dragon Zangetsu, and its ability is act on Vanguard to rearguard circle, cost Counterblast 1, call an evil decoy token to the rearguard circle, and until the end of turn all your tokens get boost and power plus 5k. So that means that all evil decoy tokens are going to be turned into 5k boosters or 5k attackers with 5k shield. That's pretty nice, as it at least gives them some extra value on the board if you just call them and you cannot really use them for abilities, or you cannot use them for intercepting. You at least get some extra value for that specific turn out of them. And you also generate a token for a counterblast, so that's actually pretty nice. Then we also got a second ability, and that's on the rearguard circle. When attacked, you may change the attack's target to one of your rearguard tokens. If you do, return this unit to your hand. So if this unit is going to be attacked, not only will you redirect the attack to one of your tokens, but you are able to bounce back this unit to your hand so it's safe from other harm. This is especially good in specific situations, as when you get a defensive trigger on one of your attacks, your opponent is probably going to use the rest of their attacks to hit in your rearguards. If this is the only rearguard left onto the field, they attack into it, and you can just redirect it to one of your tokens and bounce this back. This is nice because next turn you can recall it and just generate the token once again out of nowhere, so it's like nothing actually happened. But what's even better is against specific cards that attack multiple units at the same time. So something like Vermilion, for example, or Exculpate from the Royal Paladin clan, because once they target this one, you can change that unit's attack to the token. That sounds like counterintuitive when you're up against Exculpate, but the major thing about this is their entire target is changed to the token. So that means once Exculpate attacks everything, and you have this thing on the field, you can activate that ability and then change all their attack targets to one of the tokens. So they no longer are attacking your Vanguard, and they are no longer attacking your other rearguards. That's pretty good, especially against those specific cards. So this card has some utility uses to that, and the fact that you can generate tokens and give your tokens more ability, and it's splashable in any type of build, but it makes me to believe to give this card 5 stars. So as it just has so many utility options on the card itself. Next up we have a grade 3 that is a mix between the grade 1 and the grade 2, and that is Evil Cenobite Gamigyobu. And Gamigyobu's abilities are act on rearguard circle, cost Soul+1, and return this unit to your hand, and call an evil decoy token to the rearguard circle. So where the grade 1 Soul+2 to call 2, this one Soul+1 to call 1, so it's a smaller iteration, but you can basically call Soul+2 and call 2 tokens if you just recall to the field. And then we have the second ability, which is identical to the redirect ability of the grade 2, that's auto rearguard circle. When attacked, you may change the attack's target to one of your rearguard tokens. If you do, return this unit to your hand. So basically this adds more consistency to the whole token deck, as you have now a support grade 3 as well, and another unit that can generate them. And it's nice that this one does it in in smaller iterations, and it has the redirect skill as well. So if you have this one and the grade 2 on the front row, you basically get immunity if they want to attack into your rearguards. But I'm only going to give this one 4 stars because it's a grade 3, so meaning it's probably harder to incorporate in other decks than just the token deck, because those decks already have multiple grade 3s that you're going to focus on, so it's a little bit tougher to incorporate it. But overall, it's a pretty solid card that brings both best of both worlds from the grade 1 and the grade 2 into the mix. And it's a solid support card for that fact. Now that we know how to generate these tokens, let's take a look at cards that interact with grade 0s that are actually the tokens in disguise. Now first up, we've got this grade 1 that is Stealthy Tataribue, and its ability is auto Vanguard circle. When the attack hits a Vanguard, draw a card. So this is your typical going second ability. And then we have a second ability, and that's continuous rearguard circle. During your turn, if you have a grade 0 rearguard, this unit gets power plus 5k. So if we have one of the tokens on the field, this is a 30k attacker or beater, and it's also a a nice Vanguard unit on the second turn, as you have the potential on hit for draw. It's a nice consistency bump. The 30k is nice, but not always as consistent, as in most cases you're already going to destroy those tokens for other abilities. So depending on how your plays goes, the second ability will not be always active. So when we take everything together, I'm only going to give it 3 stars, as it's just a solid engine piece or a consistency tool that interacts with other cards for the build. Then next up, we've got another grade 1 that is Stealth Dragon Gouten, and its ability is Continuous Record Circle. If you called a grade 0 this turn, this unit gets power plus 3k. This does sound worse than Tataribue, but the fact is, this one doesn't need you to have the grade 0 still on the board, so you can use them for other abilities and then call this to the field and it still will retain the 3k. Also, this interacts quite well with something like Magatu Storm, where you can reuse it and have multiple effectiveness of its ability. And 11k booster is quite effective in a Protect clan, as it makes your 12k into 23ks or other magic numbers. So it's a pretty solid booster, but overall it is still limited in uses, and I'm only going to give it 2 stars, as it doesn't always make the magic numbers that you need, but it is useful in certain situations and in cases where you remove all the tokens from the board. The next up, we've got yet another grade 1, and that is Stealth Fiend Dododome, and her ability is Auto Record Circle. When placed, cost, discard a card from your hand and draw a card. Then cost, retire a grade 0 card, and this unit gets power plus 10k until the end of turn. So on normal circumstances, it's a cycle card. That's nice. But then we also can retire a token to give this unit 10k power. So in exchange of losing 5k shield, we can gain 10k power. That is a nice trade-off, as it gives us more flexibility in what we want to do and how we want to proceed our game state. So we got a cycle on top of a powerful booster that's 18k, or attacker in some cases. So it's a nice versatile card, and I think it's a solid 3-star card, as it's a cycle card with an extra addition that interacts with the mechanic of the clan. Then we go to the grade 2s, and first off we have Stealth Rogue of Barbarity, Akurao, and Akurao's ability is Auto Record Circle. When placed, cost, retire 2 grade 0s, draw a card. Until the end of turn, this unit can attack the Vanguard from the back row and gets power plus 15k. This, in my opinion, is definitely a 4-star card, and maybe even 5-star, because we can exchange 2 tokens, which we can generate for 2 Soul Blast, to get a draw and a powerful 24k beater that can use to achieve multi-attacks, and it can attack from behind the back row. So we can always place it behind the Vanguard circle and have a solid 4 attacks in a turn, but if we have solid beaters in the front row, we can even fill out our back row even more and have some solid multi-attacking going on. So that's a pretty solid card that can be used to really amp up the pressure against our opponent. And it can even be used in the early game if we really want to amp up the pressure. So it's a pretty nice card. Sure, it's on play, so it sounds bad, but with the new VR, we can put it back into our hand and use it later down the line again. So pretty good, solid card. Then next we have another solid grade 2 that is Stealth Dragon Jaenjin, and Jaenjin's ability is Auto Record Circle. When it attacks a Vanguard, if you call 2 or more grade 0s this turn, this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of that battle. At the end of the battle, then cost, put this unit into your soul and countercharge 1. So the entire package of this card is pretty solid for Nubatama as a whole, but especially for the new token deck, as when you call 2 of these tokens, that you can easily do with Soul Blessing 2 with the grade 1, then this one will be a 14k solid beater. So that interacts also quite well with the previous grade 2 that then can call behind it to have a solid 24k beater that can attack from the back row. But then we can, at the end of the battle, put it into the soul, which gives us more soul, so fuel for generating more tokens, and then we get a countercharge, which is fuel for either more tokens, power, or even our new VR that allows us to do all kinds of shenanigans. So overall, this is a super solid ability, and the fact that it goes to the soul also interacts quite well with the grade 2 that can recall itself from the board from hand for a counter plus 2, because we can have this as a solid beater in one column, keep the booster standing, then use that grade 2, attack with a column, bounce it back to hand, then call it in front of the grade 1 that's still able to boost to have a solid finishing column. So this card opens up a lot of options for the clan, and it also interacts well with Magatsu Storm by opening up more room, so you can then recall new board onto the field without minusing, and the fact that you get soul and counterblast out of it, is pretty good. So overall, definitely a 4-star card, as it's just so good. Now, with all those cards out of the way, let's take a look at the new VR that is, of course, Evil Stealth Dragon Akatsuki Hanzo. And its ability is act on Vanguard Circle once per turn, cost retire 2 grade 0 rear guards. This unit gets power plus 20k until the end of turn. Choose any number of all rear guards, so this also includes your opponent's field, and return them to hand. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, your opponent chooses cards from his or her hand equal to the number of his or her cards returned with this effect and discard them. So now we finally have a Vanguard that can be used from the first turn onwards, and that is what Nubatama really needed, because now we can basically reuse all our on-place effects when we go first. As when we go first, an opponent is grade 2, we can use this ability, bounce our field back to hand, then our Vanguard becomes a solid 32k beater, and then we can replace everything onto the board so we can reuse all in-place effects once again. So this gives us a huge tempo swing for only 1 counterblast, and sure, retiring 2 tokens, but that can be the same as 1 soul blast, 1 counterblast, or 2 soul blasts. Then if we went second or the following turn, we can also rebound our opponent's field, and then we force them to discard more cards from hand. That might sound bad, but then again, we are disrupting their plays and we are destroying their field. And because we can choose which cards we're bouncing, we can leave certain nasty on-place effects that are useful for them, like a Blasted Dark for a more defensive build. We can leave those onto the field and just remove everything else that we want to have from the field. This is especially good against other token decks, as we can minus them quite hard, but also this combats the issue with Fuzencongo, as when you play against Fuzencongo, you usually want to throw everything onto the board to not minus your hand all that much against his skill. But if they go into Hanzo, you can basically then still minus them, because now you bounce everything back to hand and then minus them through that. So now Nubatama has multiple ways to screw with your opponent and activate different kinds of skills. But this whole new aspect of using these tokens to recall everything and then use on-place effects more efficiently and more effectively during the main phase instead of the battle phase that we had with Magatsu Storm is an interesting approach. And the fact that we finally have a solid Vanguard beater is a warm welcome for Nubatama. So because this card opens up so many plays and fixes some issues for the clan, I'm definitely going to give this card 5 stars, as this is finally a VR that, in my opinion, will help the deck some steps forward and will potentially be a good support card for the future with other cards, as we finally have a card that can be used on turn 3 and not on turn 4. And with that, we talked about everything for the new Nubatama cards. There were a lot of interesting stuff, as we now have a new mechanic for Nubatama with the whole Evil Decoy token, but also cards that interact with grade zeros, which is a synonym for the Evil Decoy tokens, but because they not state clearly token cards, it can also be used with grade zeros like triggers or other generic grade zeros, so it opens up for more playability with other decks that won't be focusing on this new mechanic. But also besides that, we saw some interesting support cards in general that can be used in all kinds of decks, so this is a good new addition for Nubatama, which has some good pieces, but not really something to finish off. And I think we now finally have some good card pool for Nubatama to actually build some solid decks that can really screw with your opponent in any shape or form. And that basically rounds up this set review for Nubatama. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of all the cards for Nubatama, as there is a lot to discuss, as Nubatama is always about interacting and comboing cards together, so there are a lot of niche interactions that I might have overlooked and that could be applied to make certain cards really powerful, as of course all these cards interact with grade zeros, but don't forget we have that grade 0 that can copy the Vanguard's power and shield. So if we have Hanzo that is 32k power on its own and we call the grade 0, we can suddenly have a 32k power grade 0 on the board that can swing or boost like crazy. So there is a lot to explore with this new card, and with that there's also a lot to discuss. So let's discuss all that in the comments down below. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters for making this video possible. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel, then head over to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one.